chapters was on the final, and I took that problem out and put my own in. So basically just skim those or disregard them or something. I will address them in the online discussion, and I think that'll be sufficient. So next week's primary chapters will be 14 and 16, which are the sales and collection cycle, very good chapters. And then the chapter 22, a short chapter, where we can develop together an audit program for notes or bonds payable, and then we'll talk briefly about the stockholders' equity area. So that's what, don't get frightened by the extensive amount of material. Tonight we're going to go through we have some problems in chapter 10. We'll look at 23. Then I'll pass out the answer key on 12, and we'll talk about 13 and 20. Hopefully we can get all this done. We'll see how things operate. So let's go back into chapter 10. By the way, I was generally pleased with your solutions to 10-38 since we did not go over it in class. That had been an old exam question that I pilfered when I made up my own exams. But there were some other issues there in the chapter that we didn't get to last time. 10-34 is on page 326. There's an A, B, C, D, E, and we can probably combine some of this together. They want the control activity, or the internal control itself for Part A, and that's the generic terminology. Then they want a transaction-related audit objective for B, and that part is less important. I'll give it, but it's less important. Then C, identify, this part I like, a specific misstatement that could be prevented. What's an error that could be prevented if we had this internal control? Then it says for each control list a misstatement that could result if we didn't have that control. Now to me, C and D really kind of are very similar in nature. So I would probably combine them together, C, comma, D. And then E says identify an audit test that could be used to uncover misstatements if we don't have the control. Whew, so this is going to be lengthy. All right, and we're going to see a problem like this, very similar to this, in many of the remaining chapters, by the way. Okay, this one happens to deal in the payroll area, which I hope to work on as well this evening. If we have a chance, if not, we'll carry it into next week. All right, number 1. Approval of a department head or foreman on time cards is required before preparing the payroll.
This is chapter 12, right?
10.
10? Oh,
10.
hang on. I'm sorry. I'm on the
Page
wrong
326.
Okay. 326. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we're a little behind, but that's all right. I'm not worrying. Remember that week 8, Monday, only final exam review. So we don't have to do any final exam review on that Saturday of week 7.
And this is
34.
1034.
1034, which in the new edition is 1035. I just don't forget to tell them.
Okay.
All right. So, what would you consider for A? I got the official answer here, but what do you think A might be? Remember, these are generic terms. A foreman's got to sign off on a time ticket, basically saying that it appears reasonable.
The foreman?
Foreman signs off. For example, if Barry's reporting that he worked 60 hours, and I know very well he didn't, I'm not going to sign off on his card. Of course, nowadays we have a lot of electronic timekeeping where this would not be an issue. This is obviously an earlier.
Last week, my husband, his department's been insanely busy. He worked 12 hours in one day and didn't take a lunch. And HR showed up and they were like, "Did you really work 12 hours?" And he's like, "Yeah." Mm-hmm. And they're like, "You have to take a lunch."
Oh, jeez.
He's like, "But that's the time I don't work." Yeah.
Right. At least they did, once the answer said, yes, I did, they believed him anyway.
Oh, yeah.
because it
Well,
was
his boss
legitimate.
knows, yeah.
Well, they have for Part A, one is obvious to me, they have two down. Proper authorization of transactions and activities. Proper authorization of transactions and activities. That I could see right off. That's the internal verification. But I guess the other answer they had for Part A, I guess is right. Adequate segregation of duties. Adequate segregation of duties. I like that part, I guess. Part B, I don't care for that much. Just write it down. Recorded transactions exist. So it's the existence, in other words. But let's combine C and D together. And what are the possible misstatements that could occur for Part C, comma D? One of the topics I added to the online discussion last night, a couple of people addressed it, dealt with phantom employees. One possibility here is that we could have it in, remember, phantom employees, consist of, in my opinion, they consist of two categories. Number one, people who used to work for the company and through some type of collusion, you might have you have background in payroll, so feel free to bring up anything. Also when we get to the payroll chapter. But people used to work for the company who are no longer working for it, but they, through some kind of collusion, they have been kept on the payroll. They have been kept on the payroll, probably they're getting a paper check as well.
Those payrolls.
Well, basically,
Yeah.
yes. Or the other situation are people who don't exist, but someone has created or put in a social security number, etc. Remember the cartoon Dilbert? It's in the newspaper, but for a year on Comedy Central, they actually had an actual cartoon half-hour program. And there was one situation where there was an empty cubicle, so Dilbert and his friends created a fictitious employee, Tony, so they could use that cubicle. And that boss with the pointy hair or something kept saying, why can't the rest of you be like Tony? He's the #1 employee here in the department. Yet every time you look for him, he was always supposedly out at a job site or something because he didn't exist. So the phantom employees are often people who should have been taken off the payroll, but through collusion have been kept on the payroll, or they're non-existent people.
In the article I posted, a guy was making deals with people to use their information, and then they were cashing the checks and he was splitting it with them.
Yes, that's
now,
what happens, the splitting of the check.
In that kind of situation, do people usually, okay, the employee obviously would get, that's theft or fraud or whatever, but the people outside of the company, would they normally get prosecuted?
I think they could also, definitely.
They could, but...
And by the way, if you and I work that deal, if it's going to be in my name, I want more than 50% because I'm going to be taxed on the entire amount.
You're more
so you'll have to consider the tax implications.
And if they're auditing those, that payroll register, they would know that that employee no longer is with the company. Sometimes you can have...
Yeah, that's what type of internal control would you like to have when an employee is terminated or leaves the company? What type of internal control would you use?
Well, for the most part, what they do is once I go in there and stop there, because it's automatic pay, I have to go in there and so many steps that I have to do so that ADP does not push them out to be actually paid. I usually have my clerks or my process to go back and look and make sure that after payroll runs that it actually took effect. So we're working with IT to make sure that it's not reoccurring, because we had a couple of cases where employees were continuing to pay them as a direct deposit. And I caught it, the only reason I caught it was because when I run an audit after each weekly payroll register and the name came back up again.
Those employees probably wouldn't have told you themselves. They would have thought, oh, this must be some a bonus or back pay that I was entitled to that I forgot. Okay, also they said here, think of they actually have this at a lot of places. They have the old time clock and the cards, remember, in a rack on one side or the other side for people clocking in. An employee could be claiming too many hours by having a friend punch him in, or by making manual changes on time cards. I don't think that's a big issue, manual changes, but somebody could punch somebody else in, you know, so they're not there yet, but I'll punch in his card and mine, and then he'll slip in the side door or something. Now, so that's C, D.
Okay, so the phantom employee or non-existent employee in too many hours.
Right, and the too many hours, right. I'm combining C and D together. Part E, interesting idea. I remember doing this, and it's based on the logistics. They said, see who's punched in the time clock, and then find them, like on the factory floor. They can't always be in the washroom if I can't find them. So make sure all employees that are punched in are physically present.
I suppose that would work depending upon how many employees you have.
Well, that's the whole thing. I was just thinking, if you have a huge operation, that's going to be much more difficult unless you break up each area by a separate person. Right, this is exact. That's why I said based on the logistics of the situation.
What they have, for most companies, what they have for internal control, you know how some employees go and have their friends do it? Now you have to do it from your computer, and you are only allowed to log in on one computer.
Ah, very good, very good. Number 2 said all pre-numbered time cards are accounted for before beginning data entry for preparation of checks. What do you think Part A is? We're talking about pre-numbered documents. So what's A? From Chapter 10. Adequate documents and records, right? Adequate documents and records. Part B, existing transactions are recorded. I always call that completeness, although I think they have a different name for one of those in here, but existing transactions are recorded. Now, for C, D, anytime you have something that's pre-numbered, you have to account for every number in the sequence, so we could basically set here, have a missing time card or a missing time record number.
So C and D would be missing?
Yeah, missing time card, so an employee would not be paid. By the way, the model answer says, and I agree, the employee is almost certain to bring this to management's attention. When I worked that second job for many years at Northern Trust, occasionally I wouldn't get paid for both the weeks. And because it was how much time I charged him times a certain rate I got. Funny, they always underpaid me. I always got it, but you know, it's the one way to really aggravate me, is to not pay me when I did the work. Otherwise, I try and be kind of a lamb, but I become a lion in that case. As said, so you want to prevent misstatements for a short period of time and prevent employee dissatisfaction. And I was very dissatisfied when that happened, employee dissatisfaction, because they didn't get paid. And remember, some people are they're living from paycheck to paycheck. So they don't get that check, that's going to cause problems with the food bill or paying the rent or something.
Yeah.
And for Part E, obtain a list of company employees and make sure each one received a paycheck for that time period. A listing of employees, make sure each one got a paycheck for that time period. What might be an exception to that? Where somebody's...
they forgot to dock their hours, or in a case where they didn't receive pay?
Yeah, they're an active employee, or they're on the active employee list, but they didn't get a paycheck.
And didn't put the time in, or the manager forgot to put the time in and approve it.
Okay, in which case they're entitled to it. What if they were on, let me ask you because you have more payroll, what if they're on Family and Medical Leave Act? That's time off, remember, but isn't that without pay?
Some of it, first you have to use what you have left, which is maybe sick.
Oh, like vacation or sick pay or something?
Yeah, once they run out of that, it's depending on years of service, they may get 100%, some may get 60%, but it's always the manager's responsibility And once they are on full STD or long-term, it's the HR duty to go in there, put it in there, and payroll just approve it.
And that would be part of the internal control and part of the audit program. For anybody in that situation, if you were writing an audit program, you would want to cover all those areas as well as what the auditor should do.
So in my last position, I implemented a new timekeeping solution. It was web-based, but the system also had an app for your phone that employees could clock in and out.
Oh, interesting.
But part of what it did is when you clocked in or out, it also took a picture of you and saved it to the system. But it also looked at your location. Where were you?
I was just going to say, so if you're if you're at the
easy.
park or something with a park bench and a tree behind you.
Yeah. So when you got your report, you could see, you know, not only when they clocked in and out, but you could see, yes, it was them because there's the picture, and they were, you know, here in the building when they did it.
You know, that's a handy idea though, because if you did it, otherwise they'll have the app. Like I said, they could be anywhere.
Right.
But what if they clock in at the location?
Oh, then duck out?
Yeah.
Oh, then that's another issue.
Well, yeah.
That's right. Good point though, yes. Okay, number 3, the computer calculates gross pay and net pay based on hours inputted and information in employee master files, and payroll accounting personnel double check the mathematical accuracy. Well, I think the computer could do that. What you need to look at there, of course, are make sure that the correct hours are in there and the correct wage rate. Watch out when someone gets a pay increase.
Yeah.
Make sure you have the effective date that is going to incorporate it. Some cases there might be union negotiations going on where they work at the old pay rate, but the new pay rate is retroactive. So there could be a number of issues here. Part A, this is 3A, independent checks on performance. I guess B would be accuracy. Now the CD combination, yes.
What was the E?
I'm sorry.
E?
Independent checks on performance.
Independent checks on performance, and I call B accuracy. They have a real long sentence. Recorded transactions are stated the correct amounts. That's accuracy. I'd rather use one word. The CD thing now, some of what's in our text is kind of outdated. I don't think you're going to see a lot of mathematical errors, but the error could be where somebody is paid at the wrong wage rate.
Yeah.
That I think would be the most significant issue, or perhaps the wrong number of hours.
Or you have some that's leaving non-exempt and going to exempt. And like you said,
Oh, interesting point of view.
Yeah.
Are they entitled to the overtime pay
Yeah.
then, or what?
Yeah.
And didn't they just change some rules recently about that pay level when you're entitled to overtime? I think it's like 50, if you make less than 50,000, they raised the rate level where you have to be paid for overtime or
55
something.
and under, I think you get.
Okay, I think they raised it, whatever it is.
Because I noticed at the last company that I was at, they put a young lady, and she fresh out of college. She may have been 25 at the most. They had her exempt, and she was only making 40 grand. I'm like, that's a ripoff.
No, exactly.
And I was saying at some point, you know, you are not supposed to be on exempt at 40 grand. That they're not paying overtime. And another thing I noticed that it's a 38.75 week pay period. So anything after 38.75, they gave them overtime. But when it got to the 40-hour mark, they went back to regular pay. But the people never paid attention to that. And I'm like, this. At some point, they're going to, I'm not sure how they're still operating it. Ernst & Young are their auditors. But they haven't said anything about it. But I'm like, they're ripping these people off. People that's been there for years.
Yeah, and no one's ever brought it up, but they're being underpaid.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, and it's my stomach just.
But I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at that at all. I'll bet that happens a lot more frequently than you imagine.
Yeah. I'm like, they think they're getting overtime, but they're really not.
No, they're not. Oh, and Part E just said recheck the amount for gross payroll, withholding, and net payroll. Let me ask you a question too on that. Withholding, there's so many things for withholding now. Can you explain how that's handled? You see that? You know, whether it's not just withholding for the taxes, you know, what is that, Circular E or something, but also now, you know, taking money out for health insurance,
dental,
you know,
401k.
401k. There's so many possibilities there. And how do you handle garnishment? Do you have any employees whose wages are garnished?
Well, initially when we receive the garnishment, we have to contact the employee to let them know that it will be set up, because it's illegal to go in there and set it up and they're not. Because people, like you said, live check to check, and you just can't go and set up something, then they're expecting that 30 or 20% that you're taking out, even for child support. Some people have multiple child support cases that I have to set up, and you have to call them in the office, you know, and notify them. And what I like to do, I like to have either their supervisor there or someone else is there with their permission.
Oh,
so
okay, and with the witness too.
Yeah, so they'll say, well, I didn't know this was coming out, because I had one employee that was overpaid some hours, and she claimed she didn't know that we had the conversation, but I had the emails to prove it. So I always like to say, if it's not in black and white, it doesn't exist, because people can say, well, you know, you never notified me. But I tell the employees, hey, this is coming out of your check. I'm going to start. I'm going to give you 2 weeks, and then I'll start it up, and it's due to end in such and such month. So,
hey, what's the maximum of the wages that could be garnished? Isn't there a percentage or something?
for child support, it's 30%.
Now, even if we have multiple child support problems, it still can't exceed 30%.
It can't exceed 30%.
Total.
The first case that, or garnishment that comes in, is actually more, and the other ones, let's just say the first mom or the first dad may receive 20%, and then the other, I
could only get 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious about that.
Or 5%.
Because you mentioned some cases there's multiple
Yeah,
ones.
I've seen one guy, he had 6.
Oh my
God. Then it was a guy that he was receiving it from the mom.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that was kind of ironic. She didn't give me any problem. She was like, yeah, I gave him full custody, all paid.
Oh, geez, all right. Well, I guess I thought there was maternal instinct, but maybe there isn't. What can I say?
She was like, yeah, we decided.
We agreed upon that, and that's
she was
fine.
much younger than him, so I think that it was like a 10-year difference, but she said, you know, it didn't work out, so the kid stayed with the dad. He's more financially stable, and, you know, I just rather take my visits, you know, when the court appoints him. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right, okay, I guess it makes sense. Number 4, all voided and spoiled payroll checks are properly mutilated and retained. What's A, everyone? You know A. Adequate documents and records, sure. Adequate documents and records. B, let's basically existing transactions are recorded. Existing transactions are recorded. The CD combination, CD, said a check could be prepared for an inappropriate person. In other words, a check should have been voided and somebody takes the check and they could cash it. So a person who was supposed to void the check could record it as voided and then cash the check. Now, obviously, that had to have some control over the bank reconciliation when that came in.
So CD is the check can be prepared?
Yeah, the check which was supposed to be voided could be recorded, could be cashed by the person who was supposed to void it.
That's why they should have, I think most companies supposed to have 2 signers. And if the check needs to be voided, it shows up on the payroll register the following week.
All right.
The Treasury Department usually are the ones to audit those reports and control them.
Good, good. Because that'll happen occasionally, so I mean, you need to have that. Part E said test the month-end bank reconciliation. Looking for a check that cleared that should have been voided. So check the month-end bank reconciliation for a check that cleared that should have been voided, because obviously it was voided, it shouldn't clear because it shouldn't have been in the financial cycle. I remember many years ago here at the school, a student, I'm not sure how this happened, but somebody came in to work for us on a part-time basis, and their final pay, or maybe they only did it a one-time thing. All I know is that they had a more common name, and they lived like in Downers Grove. So somebody, you'd think they would be on the W-4, which would show their address,
right,
social security number, and so forth, made out the check to that person's name, but sent it to the wrong address. They sent it to Downers Grove to another person with the same name. And that person got the check and cashed it.
So
I'm not sure how that happened, because on the W-4 it would show that information, or in the personnel files they should show the correct address for somebody.
yeah, unless the person who was actually processing the check did not pay attention. Or
Well, that's I think what happened. This is probably back in the 80s, but I'll never forget, because they kept trying to get the money back from the other person, and would the other person be liable? Because, I mean, a check is made to them and sent to their address.
But it's, I mean, you use your moral judgment. You know that you call and say, wait, I received this check. Is this an error or is this correct? Because it's been times where I've received a direct deposit, and I said, I'll call. I was like, wait, do you guys? And I think it was from DeVry one time. I was like, why am I receiving this? And she was like, oh, this is, once we went over the books, because I noticed that I was being charged incorrectly, and I talked to him about it. He was like, no, it's wrong. I said, but I have all my bills here, and you guys didn't disperse correctly. And it took about a month or two, and next thing I know, I saw $300. I'm like, wait, is this right?